Okay, so we're going to do some competency exam question review here. So the first one we're looking at is finding the slope. And we're looking at the slope that contains 2 points. So we're looking at 3, 2 and 8, 11. So the slope is, or slope formula is m equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So what you need to do is label your points, x1, y1, x2, y2. It doesn't matter which point is point 1 and point 2, it'll get you to the same answer. Just go the same direction. So that's going to be m is equal to y sub 2, which is 11, minus y sub 1 is 2, over x sub 2, which is 8, minus x sub 1, which is 3. 11 minus 2 will get us 9. 8 minus 3 will get us 5. And that's your answer right there. All right, let's look at 2 more points. So if we have 2, 9, and 6, 4. Again, I'm going to label. So my m will be y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So 4 minus 9 is a negative 5. 6 minus 2 is 4. And that's my answer. All right, let's look at question number 2. Here we are multiplying polynomials. So we're looking at x plus 7 times x plus 3. So x plus 7 times x plus 3, basically you're FOILing. So x times x is x squared, x times 3 is 3x. 7 times x is 7x, 7 times 3 is 21. You'll combine those terms in the middle. So x squared plus 10x plus 21. If you notice, I'm just covering up the one I don't need, because then I can just follow it a little bit easier than drawing all the arrows. And usually your middle term will combine. You always got to combine like terms. Let's try one more. 7x plus 3y times x plus 5y. So we're going to do the same thing. 7x times x is 7x squared, 7x times 5y, 35xy. 3y times x, you can write that as 3yx or 3xy. It doesn't matter because it's multiplication, and those two terms will still combine together no matter how you write it. And 3y times 5y will get us 15y squared. So these two are going to combine. 7x squared, 35 plus 3 will get us 38xy plus 15y squared. All right, let's look at example 3. This one is a reducing question. So if we are given 15x minus 27y over 3x, we want to look and see what the common factors are. So up here at the top, between 15 and negative 27, that's going to be a 3. And I'll have 5x minus 9y over 3x. The 3's will cancel, and we'll end up with 5x minus 9y over x. You cannot cancel those two x's because the top part is stuck together with that minus sign, so you cannot do anything else. All right, let's look at another one. So 12y minus 24 over 6y squared minus 12y. So again, we're looking at what can we factor out. So on the top, between 12y and negative 24, I can factor out a 12. If you don't see exactly what you can factor out, do look at the smaller number and see if it'll divide into the bigger number. They both don't have a variable, so it's just a 12, and I end up with y minus 2. Now let's look at the denominator. Between the 6 and the 12, well, 6 will go into 12, so now I can pull the 6, and they both have a y. 6y squared divided by 6y will leave me y. Negative 12y divided by 6y will get me negative 2. Notice right here that the parentheses match. When you're doing the ones that look like this on the test, this is going to be the case every time. Your parentheses should match. That's what we're trying to get you to be able to factor that out and reduce it in C. So these will reduce. I now have 12 over 6y. I have to look at that and see if it will reduce. Well, 6 will go into 12 two times, so it actually end up being 2 over y will be my final answer. All right, next question. So question number 4. Find the x-intercept and the y-intercept and graph. Now, on this question, on the exam, you actually have to use the x and y-intercepts. You cannot do it using the slope. So make sure you know how to do these. And here is our function. So 2x minus 4y is equal to 8. So to find the x-intercept, y is equal to 0. So 2x minus 4 times 0 equals 8. Well, anything times 0 goes away, so 2x will be equal to 8. Divide by 2. X equals 4, so my point will be 4, 0. Y-intercept. We have x is equal to 0. So that means we have 2 times 0 minus 4y equals 8. Don't forget the negative sign when you bring that down, because 2 times 0 is 0, so negative 4y equals 8. Divide by negative 4, and y will be equal to negative 2. So the point is 0, negative 2, because your x is equal to 0. All right, so now let's graph it. We don't need a big graph, and a graph will be provided, but you don't need a big one because we're only going to 4 and to negative 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So the x-intercept is 4, the y is negative 2. Draw your line. Don't forget to draw the line. I have some students who have left off the line. All right, let's do another one. So 4x plus 6y is equal to 12. So for the x-intercept, y equals 0. So 4x plus 6 times 0 equals 12. So 4x will equal 12. Divide by 4. X equals 3. You actually have to show this step. Even though you know it's going to go away, you have to show your work. If you don't show your work, you can't receive all the credit. So y-intercept, x will be equal to 0. So 4 times 0 plus 6y equals 12. 6y equals 12. Divide by 6. Y will be equal to 2. So 2, 0. And then let's graph it. We need up to 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So 3 for this one and 2 for that one. And there we go. And that's all you got to do. All right, next problem. We are looking to simplify. We're actually going to simplify some radicals. So the square root of 150, x to the 5th, y squared. So I'm going to show you the easy way to do this. So first of all, let's do a factor tree on 150. You can do any numbers you want. You can use 10, you can use 5, you can use 25. It doesn't matter. When it ends in 0, I usually like to do 10, and that'll be 10 times 15. So we'll have 2 times 5 and 3 times 5. So now I'm going to rewrite this as 2 times 3 times 5 times 5. I have 5 x's, so I'm going to write those out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 2 y's. Now I'm looking for 2 of each kind because I'm doing a square root. So that means I need 2 to match to come out. So I only have one of these, but I have two 5s. I have a pair of x's, I have another pair of x's, I have one left over, and I have a pair of y's. So everything that comes out with those circles comes out one time. So this will be 5 times x times y times the square root of 2 times 3 times x. That's what's left over on the inside. Now let's clean this up a little bit. So this will be 5x times x is x squared times y, square root of 6x. All right, let's look at another one. So if we have the cubed root of 32a to the 6th, b to the 5th. So again, we're going to do a factor tree. Well, 4 times 8 gets me 32. 4 is 2 times 2. 8 is 2 times 4, and then 2 times 2. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 2s. You only do the ones that are at the end. Just make sure you get them all. One way you can check it is to take your numbers and multiply them back to make sure you get to your original number. So 2 times 3 is 6. 6 times 5 is 30. 30 times 5 will be 150. So here I have 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Well, 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32. So I can double check to make sure I get to there. And I didn't bring in too many numbers, and I didn't leave anybody out. I have 6 A's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I have 5 B's. Now, this time I'm looking for groups of 3. So I have to have 3 of a kind. I have 3 2's, but now I have 2 left over, so those will stay. I have a group of 3 A's, a group of 3 A's, a group of 3 B's, and now I have 2. So the group of 2's will put 1, 2 on the outside. I have 2 groups of A and a group of B. And then I have, oh, don't forget the 3 there. And then I have a cubed root of 2 times 2 times B times B. Well, those 2 groups of A will become A squared times a B. Cubed root of 2 times 2 is 4. B times B is B squared. And that's all you have to do on that. All right, let's go look at problem number 6. All right, so number 6, we are going to solve the inequality. Graph it, and give the answer in interval notation. So here's our problem. We have 8x minus 7, which is less than or equal to 5x minus 2. So what we need to do is get the x's on one side and then get the numbers on the other. So I like to keep my x's positive, so I'm going to move the 5x over. So that'll get me 3x minus 7, less than or equal to negative 2. Add the 7, and get 3x is less than or equal to 7 minus 2 is 5. Divide by 3, and x is less than or equal to 5/3. So the solution is x is less than or equal to 5/3. To graph it, you're just having a number line here with your infinities and the number that you found, 5/3. So it's less than or equal to, so less than means it's going to the left. Equal to part means it'll have a bracket. So your interval notation will be from negative infinity to 5/3 with a bracket on that part. All right, let's go look at another one. 8 minus 4x less than 24. So this time all the x's are on one side, so I'm going to leave them. Move the 8 over. I get negative 4x is less than 24 minus 8 will get us 16. Now I'm going to divide by the negative 4 to solve for x. But this is where you have to remember, if you multiply or divide across the inequality with a negative, you have to flip the inequality sign. So as soon as I'm doing that, I'm going to flip the inequality. So x is greater than negative 4. And the reason you have to do this is because if I instead move my 4x over and then move the 24 this way, I have to get the same answer. And if I move that over, I'm not going to flip the inequality, and my x would be on this side, and it's going to be greater than. And when I move that 24 over, I'd have negative 16, and I'd end up with a negative 4. But that x has to be on the right side of the inequality. When we deal with equal signs, it doesn't matter. But you can test it for yourself and move the 4x over, move the 24 over, and see if you get the same answer. If you don't flip that, you won't. All right, so what's our solution? Our solution is going to be x is greater than negative 4. The graph will be from, oops, I got to do the graph, meant to be an arrow. Negative infinity to infinity with a negative 4. It's greater than, so because it's greater than negative 4, it's going to go to the right. So less than goes left, greater than goes right. This time we don't have an equal, so it'll just be a parenthesis. So our interval notation will be negative 4 to infinity. All right, we've got one more of these. So we have negative 4 less than 2x minus 6 less than or equal to 8. So here we have the x in the middle. We need to get it by itself. So I'm going to add 6 to all sides. So that will get us 6 minus 4 is 2, less than 2x, less than or equal to 8 plus 6, which is 14. Now to get x by itself, I'm going to divide by 2. So 1 is less than x, less than or equal to 7. So my solution is 1 less than x less than or equal to 7. The graph, this time I'll have two numbers. I have 1 and I have 7. And x is less than, or sorry, x is greater than 1, so it's going to go this way, and it gets a parentheses, but x is less than or equal to 7, so it's going to go to the left. And it's got an equal part, so it will get a bracket. So interval notation will be from 1 to 7 with a bracket on the 7. All right, so the next thing we're going to look at is some exponent rules. So there's lots of exponent rules. There's the zero exponent rule where anything to the 0 is 1. A product rule where we add our exponents, the power rule where we, the power rule where we raise them to the power, the quotient rule, subtracting them, the negative exponent rule, and we're going to kind of combine those together. So we're going to look at number 7, and we're going to simplify using exponent rules. So we're going to use those rules I was just mentioning. So if we have negative 6a squared b cubed times negative 3ab cubed, we are looking to go ahead and combine these together by multiplication. Well, negative 6 times negative 3 will be positive 18. And for the a's, we have a 2 here and we have a 1 here. So remember, with your product rule, we're going to add them together. So this will become a to the 2 plus 1. And the b's will be 3 plus 3. We're going to add those exponents when we multiply. So this will become 18a to the third, b to the sixth. All right, let's look at 24a to the 10th, b cubed, divided by 10a, b to the 11th. So for here, we're going to look at our numbers, and we'll get to those here in a second. So I'm just going to put 24 over 10. Now what happens with our exponents? So you can move them all to the top, and we'll start with that so you can see the different choices you have, and then I won't do that in the future. So this will be a to the 10 minus 1, because when it crosses the line, it'll change its sign as it comes up. Because it's here, when it comes up, it'll be a subtraction. And then this would be b to the 3 minus 11, because the 11 when it comes up. Now you don't have to do this one this way. I'm just showing you options, and as we do the other ones, I won't do it this way. All right, 24 over 10, they both divide by 2. So I'm going to get 12 over 5. 10 minus 1 would get me a to the 9. And b is 3 minus 11, which would be b to the negative 8. Well, I can't leave it with a negative exponent. I have to have all positive. So this will become 12 over 5, a to the 9, and the 8 will go down for the b's. So that's one way you can do it. You did not have to go this way. You could have just done the b's getting down to the bottom at the beginning. And you'll see that as we move forward. All right, let's look at this example. 6xy to the first times 4x squared y cubed to the negative 2 and 3x to the 0 power. Let's make that look more like a 0. All right, so anything to the 0 power is equal to 1. So this part here does not change anything because you're just multiplying by 1. So we're not going to worry about that part. This part will come up on top. This one has a negative exponent, so we're going to go ahead and move the whole thing down to the denominator. The only exponent that changes is the one on the outside. So we'll have 4x squared y cubed to the second power. All right, so now we have 6xy on the top. Now we have to move this exponent and apply it to each of the parts. So that becomes 4 squared. And then this is x to the 2 times 2, because this is the power rule. So when you raise it to the power, you're going to multiply. And the y to the 3 times 2. So 6xy. 4 squared is 16. 2 times 2 will get us x to the 4th. 3 times 2 will get us y to the 6th. Now we need to reduce. Well, 6 over 16, they both reduce by 2, so that will be 3 over 8. Now, we have more x's on the bottom than we do on the top, so that's going to again become subtraction, but this will be x to the 4 minus 1. Again, the y is there's more on the bottom, so this will become y to the 6 minus 1 because there's one x and one y there. So this will become 3 over 8, x to the 3rd, and y to the 5th. And that would be your final answer. So you could have done the one up here just like I did on this one, once you got to that point. All right, let's look at another one. So we have 5x cubed y squared to the negative 3 times 7xy to the 0 times 25x to the 7 y squared to the first power. So the negative exponent has to go in the denominator. So 5x cubed y squared to the positive 3. The 7xy to the 0 will not become anything that we have to worry about because, again, that becomes 1, and 1 times anything is still itself. But this part will go up on the top. I drew my line a little bit long, but that's okay. All right, so on the top we have 25x to the 7y squared, because anything to that first power, it doesn't change it at all. Now we have 5 cubed. I'm not going to write it out like I did the last one. So 5 cubed, that's 5 times 5 times 5 is 125. X to the 3 times 3 would be x to the 9. Y to the 2 times 3 will be y to the 6th. All right, 25 divided by, or 25 divides into 125. It'll go 5 times, so we'll have 1 over 5. There's more x's in the denominator, so 9 minus 7 will get us x squared in the denominator. 6 minus 2 will get us y to the 4th. Now in this part here, if we hadn't already written the 1, we would have to write the 1. You can't write it as just 5x squared y to the 4th. There has to be a 1 up top. So make sure you don't forget that part of it. All right, next part. We're going to factor completely. So the first one we're looking at is difference of squares. So if we look at the example of 9x squared minus 25, this is a square, this is a square, and this is a square. Let me write that out again. It's difference of squares. It's one of the easiest ways to factor if you know what it is. These will factor to be a minus in the middle and a plus in the middle. It doesn't matter if you put minus plus or plus minus. It doesn't really matter. Basically, you're going to look at that and take square root of each of them. So the square root of 9 would be 3. Square root of x would be x. Square root of 25 would be 5. And then repeat. And that's your answer. All right, let's go look at another one. 4x squared minus 16. Well, between that, I have to look for a common factor. I have a factor of 4, and then it becomes x squared minus 4, because 16 divided by 4 would be 4. Now it becomes that difference of squares. So a minus and a plus, or a plus and a minus, it doesn't matter. Keep your 4. Square root of x squared is x. Square root of 4 is 2. And repeat. Let's look at one more. 36 minus y squared. Nothing in common. It doesn't matter that they're in a different order than what the others have been. They're both squares. This time I'll put the plus and the minus so you see it doesn't matter. Square root of 36 is 6. Square root of y squared is y. And repeat. That's all you have to do with those. I like factoring those because they're so simple. All right. Let's look at number 9. So we're going to factor completely again. Completely. And we're doing the sum and difference of cubes. So now we're looking for perfect cubes. So there's two formulas that go with this. So the sum is a cubed plus b cubed, which gets you a plus b, a squared minus ab plus b squared, and the difference would be a cubed minus b cubed, which would be a minus b times a squared plus ab plus b squared. Now, the way to remember these is it is SOAP. So it's the same sign, so those are positive or negative. It is the opposite sign. This one's positive, so it's going to be negative. This one was negative, it's going to be positive. And this one's always positive. So same, opposite, always positive. So if I know it's an A and a B and an A squared and a B and a B squared, I know what the formula is, because if it's a plus, this will be a plus, that one will be a minus, that'll be a plus. If it's a minus and a plus and plus. But, so SOAP is a way to remember that. Alrighty, let's look at our first problem. So 64x cubed minus 27. So you're looking for the cube of these now. So I need to know what A is and what B is. So basically I'm looking at that first part and I want to take the cubed root of them. Well, the cubed root of 64 is going to get me 4, and the cubed root of x cubed will be x. The cubed root of 27 will be 3. And you just write the number. You don't need to bring the sign because that's included in the formula. So because this is a difference, I'm going to use that formula. And I'll have 4x minus 3 times 4x squared plus 4x times 3 plus 3 squared. So let's simplify this up a little bit. 4x minus 3, 4x squared will get me 16x squared. 4x times 3 is 12x, and 3 squared will get me 9. And that's it. Let's go look at another example. So 16x cubed plus 2y cubed. Well, this one looks like a cube, and it looks like the sum of cubes. But I can't take this cubed root of 16 or the cubed root of 2. But they have a common factor in them. They're both divisible by 2, so let's try that. 8x cubed plus y cubed. 8 is a perfect cube, and 1 is. So for my A, the cubed root of 8 is 2. Cubed root of x cubed is x. B will be, the cubed root of y cubed will be y. So now we'll have 2x minus y. Oh no, sorry, same and then opposite. So 2x plus y times 2x squared minus 2x times y plus y squared, which becomes 2x plus y. 2x squared will become 4x squared. 2x times y would be 2xy plus y squared. And that's all you have to do for the sum and difference of cubes. All right, now let's go factor with the AC method. So we're still factoring completely, but this time we're going to do the AC method. So if we have x squared plus 8x plus 15, doing the AC method, we take A times C trying to get to B. So my A is 1 times my C, which is 15. 1 times 15 will get me 15, and my B is 8. That comes from the fact that it's ax squared plus bx plus c. All right, so I need the factors of 15 to reach to 8. Everything's positive, so that makes it nice. So 1 times 15 gets me 15. When I add them, I get 16. 15 doesn't divide by 2, but it divides by 3. 3 times 5 is 15. When I add them, I get my 8. That's exactly what I wanted. All right, so we come over here and rewrite 8 as 3 and 5. So x squared plus 3x plus 5x plus 15. We now have 4 terms we can factor by grouping. So in the first half, x squared and 3x have a common factor of x, and I end up with x plus 3. Bring down the plus sign. Between 5x and 15, they have a factor of 5, and I get x plus 3. We know we did it right if what's in the parentheses match. Well, they're both x plus 3, so now I have a factor of x plus 3 in common, and I group together the x plus 5 that are out front. Now what I want you to notice is when you have a 1 out front, you end up with the same numbers that you found. So when there's a 1 out front, you can go straight through the parentheses, or you can factor it the long way. But this only works when there's a 1 out front. When there's not a 1, it won't work that way. So I could have skipped these parts and gone from here to there on this one. On the next one, you can't do that because we have more than a 1 out in front to factor. So if we have 6x squared minus 17x plus 12, well, these are some big numbers, but we can do this. So a times c, trying to get me to b. So I have 6 times 12, which will be 72, trying to get to a negative 17. All right, let's start with 1 and 72. If I start with the 1 and the number, I can get the signs figured out without worrying about where my numbers are. Now I have to get to a negative b, but this is positive. That tells me that both of these will be negative. So negative 1 times a negative 72 gets me positive 72. And when I add them, I get negative 73. This is not the number I'm looking for, but I did get the sign right, and that's important. 72 divided by 2 will get me 36. When I add those, I get negative 38. It divides by 3. I get negative 3 and negative 24, which will get me negative 27. I'm not there yet, but I'm getting closer to the right number. Negative 4 times negative 18. When I add those, I'll get negative 22. It doesn't divide by 5, but it divides by 6, so negative 6 and negative 12 will get me negative 18. Doesn't divide by 7, but negative 8 times negative 9 gets me the 72, and when I add them, I get negative 17, which is what I'm looking for. Now, you don't have to list all of them, but I know that if I get all the way down and it doesn't work, then it's not factorable. And this way I don't have to worry that I skipped one. So again, I'm going to take these two numbers and rewrite the 17. So 6x squared minus 8x minus 9x plus 12. I have 4 numbers, factor by grouping. The first half will factor out a 2 and an x, and we're left with 3x minus 4. Bring down whatever sign that is. This time it's a negative sign. Between 9x and 12, I can factor out a 3, and I get 3x minus 4. Now, if you had written positive 4, you would notice they wouldn't match. So then go back and look. 12 divided by negative 3 is negative 4. Because if those two don't match, you need to stop and figure out where you went wrong. And sometimes they only have a 1 that will factor out, and that's okay. All right, we matched, so we have 3x minus 4 times 2x minus 3. And there you go. All right, 11th type of problem is reduce radicals. So with reducing radicals, remember if we have like the square root of 4, that's 2. Square root of negative 4, you've got to pull out the I first because I is equal to that square root of negative 1. So if we pull out the I, we get I, square root of 4, and then the square root of 4 is going to be 2I. Now the reason we're not doing plus or minus is because I already have the radical there. We didn't introduce it, it was part of the problem. All right, so we need to do a reducing of, let's do a bigger reducing of radicals. So let's look at a problem. Try to make sure we did not already do those. Oh, we already did. Okay, so we're looking at this. Remember, this is similar to what we did before, but we're just looking at the I part as we go into the quadratic formula. I'm thinking we did those. All right, so number 12, we're doing the solve by the quadratic formula. You cannot factor with the quadratic formula, but you can solve with it. All right, so x is equal to negative b plus or minus the b squared minus 4ac all under the radical, all over 2a. So here is our problem. 2x squared minus 8x plus 5 is equal to 0. So we are looking at figuring out what a is, what b is, and what c is. So a equals 2, b equals negative 8, and c equals 5. And that comes straight off of there. Don't forget the negative signs. So x will be equal to the opposite of b plus or minus b squared minus 4 times a times c. Notice I always put that in parentheses because a whole number gets squared. So you're never going to have a negative come out of this part. This part right here, this can cause you to have a negative, but this part is always going to be positive because you're squaring that b. And it's all over 2a. Make sure it always stays all over 2a and you don't shrink it up. So this will be negative 8 plus or minus the square root. Negative 8 squared is 64. That's what I mean by positive at that point. I have a negative times a positive times a positive, so I like to take care of the sign. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 5 is 40. All over 4. So negative 8 plus or minus 64 minus 40 is the square root of 24. All over 4. Now, going back and doing what we've done before, I'm going to take the square root of 24 and break it down. So we can do 2 times 12, 4 times 6, 3 times 8. It doesn't matter. Let's go with 4 times 6. So 2 and 2, and 2 and 3. So this equals the square root of 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. We're looking for a group of 2 numbers that match. So this will be 2 times the square root of 2 times 3 is 6. Put this back into our problem. And you end up with negative 8 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 6 all over 4. Now they all, not the square root, you can't touch that one, but 8, 2, and 4 I'll divide by 2. So I'll factor out a 2 at the top and get negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 6 all over 4. 2 goes into 2 once, it goes into 4 twice. So we get negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 6 all over 2. And that would be your final answer. Now, there's 3 types of answers you can get with the quadratic formula. This is the first one. Let's go look at the next one. This is just looking at reducing. So we're not going to solve the whole thing. I'm just going to show you about reducing the quadratic formula answers. Because the rest of it kind of works out. But what happens when you get the different types of answers? So if you end up with something that looks like this, so it's kind of similar to what we had, but if that 24 had been a perfect square like 36, we have to do something a little different. So the square root of 36 is 6, so negative 2 plus or minus 6 over 16. So that becomes 2 answers. Whenever you end up with all numbers, you have to simplify it down. So negative 2 plus 6 over 16 and negative 2 minus 6 over 16. Well, negative 2 plus 6 is 4 over 16, and that reduces down to 1/4. Negative 2 minus 6 is negative 8 over 16, which gets you negative 1/2. So here, your final answers would be 1/4 and negative 1/2. That would be the final answers. Okay? Or you can box them either way. All right. So for let's look at another example of this. So 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 44 over 6. So this time we got a different answer in the radical part, because that's where it's really going to change. Well, we can't have a negative in there, so we have to pull it out. Remember, I is equal to that square root of negative 1. So this would be 2 plus or minus I square root of 44 over 6. Well, you got to break down that square root of 44. So that would be like 4 times 11, which is 2 times 2. Square root of 2 times 2 times 11. Got a group of 2. So 2 square roots of 11. So this becomes 2 plus or minus 2i square root of 11 all over 6. Again, 2, 2, and 2 will all divide by 2. So I'm going to factor out a 2 and get 1 plus or minus I square root of 11 all over 6. 2 goes into 2 once, it goes into 6 3 times, we get 1 plus or minus I square root of 11 all over 3. So that's the different types of answers you can get on the quadratic formula. So study up for that test.